Hello friends and welcome to another Colour Along. Today we're colouring Mr Fogherty and we're colouring from Lost in Time. And the page we're colouring is Time Space Conundrum, where Mr Fogherty returns home and meets himself breaking the Time Space Continuum. And here we have one version of Mr Fogherty who's been working obviously with his spanner. And then we've got another version who's come back dressed in his fancy gear. They've both met each other, which when you're time travelling, we all know is a terrible thing to do because time and space explode. And here we have in the background his beautiful mantelpiece exploding. We've also got Snail meeting himself, so it's a double whammy, Mr Fogherty and Snail meeting. So I thought this is a fun one and I want to give it a go at colouring. And I think the best place to start is going to be Mr Fogherty's face in his skin, because that's going to be green and you can't really mess with that once we've started, can we? I'm going to go with it. And do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to grab my Derwent Inktense and I'm going to pick some colours from my Inktense range. And I've done this before and I can't remember what colours I used. But I'm going to go maybe with an apple green for his underbelly. And let's go with a spring green. I'm pretty happy with my spring greens. And let's go with a felt green. Felt green, spring green, apple green. So I've got my apple green. And I'm going to use a colourless blender. This is just one from a random set. But you can use whichever colourless blender you've got. Alright. So this is my apple green. And I'm just bringing in a little bit of a light touch around his belly, maybe a little bit around his eyes. And the fun thing about Derwent Inktense is that you can blend them, and I like blending them with the colourless blender. Now before I get going with all of my mediums, I've just got a blank sheet of paper and a sheet of acetate under my page to protect the page below it. I think his hands are going to be a little bit lighter underneath on his palms and a little bit darker on top. And we can see his ankles, but I think he'll have socks on down here, won't he? Alright, maybe some of these spots should be lighter. And because I'm mirroring him, we can just double up on our colours. So let's essentially mirror what we just did. I love the way his fingers are all shocked. But they're shocked in the same way because he's the same frog, so he's having the same reaction at meeting himself. Mr Fogherty, he's so much fun. I think some of his underarms should be a little bit of this lighter colour too. All right. I'm going to put away my apple green and I'm going to bring out my felt green and my spring green, and I think the felt green's the lighter one. Yeah, I forgot to put on the light spots with my apple green over on this side. Back to our felt green. And I think just a little touch of spring green in there. All right, I'm bringing in my colourless blender Let's just see how that works. Yeah, there's nothing quite as much fun as activating some Derwent Inktense on your page, is there? Bringing those colours to life. I guess the only thing that's more fun than doing that is when you're doing it to Mr Fogherty. I think I need more ink. Where's my thick nib? I feel like I'm convincing that spring green to work with us. And I don't mind if it's all sort of smudging around and getting into sort of what I was hoping for. All right, I just want to add a little bit more depth into this colour, so I'm going to bring some Ionian green just into some of the back parts of this, maybe up into here a bit. I think we need to give a little bit more convincing shadow areas. Certainly under his eyes he's going to need a bit of that, isn't he? I think just a touch on the back of his wrists there. And of course let's mirror that on the other side. I'm going to grab some of that felt green for the stems of the roses. Yeah, I'm going to bring some of that Ionian green in. And just using our colourless blender again to activate our Derwents. Alright, I've got this vine around the outside. I'm just going to do a little bit of apple green. Let's play a bit of apple green, a bit of that Ionian green. Let's see how we go with that. Back to our apple green. Well, I thought this would be a fun one to colour because we've got Mr Fogherty in 2 different outfits. And the outfits that he's wearing is pretty much the focus of the illustration, apart from this mantelpiece and clock. So the border's pretty simple. Back to Ionian green just to put a bit of shadow in there. I started out with the green because pretty much that's Mr Fogherty's skin colour, so you can't mess with that. All our other colours are going to have to work in and match that. So I thought, let's kick off with that, and then we'll know that we're having a win if we pick colours that go with it. I hope you guys have been enjoying the colour alongs that I'm doing in June. I think we're getting through them. We're midway through the month almost. After this, I think there's only one to go. So then we're into July, which I just picked this morning. So I've picked out the colours, not the colours, the pages that I want to colour through July. I'll hopefully be sharing those with you guys soon. Well, I will be. There's some exciting news in the June email, which is shortly to be released. So if you're not on the mailing list, why not, I ask you? Get on there today. All right, I'm putting away my greens for now. Another thing we can't really change is Snail. I just want to lightly put in some oak around here because his underbelly is going to be lighter. I think we need just a little bit more of that oak on the end of his tentacles and his eye buds, eye stalks. All right, now for his body, I'm still going to use oak, but I'm going to put it on a bit thicker and darker. And as mentioned, I'm going to put a bit of saddle saddle brown as well into there. Whilst trying to leave those spots on his back, that light oak. And I'm going to bring out my thick nib because I really want to mix that well. And I'm going to try and zoom them up into his eyeballs. Beautiful. So what I love about the Inktense is you can use the same colour but with different, you can have a wash of it basically. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing to this side, and the same, basically this is oak, but I'm putting it on nice and thickly. This guy's got a hat on, so I'm going to put some oak up there to indicate some shadow. I'm going to try to not colour in his bow tie. And our saddle brown's coming into play as well. I'll bring that finer nib in just to work around those little spots on his back. Right, now I'm going to work on what we can see of Snail's shell. And I'm thinking the highlights I'm going to use are mustard. So I'm going to try and bring in some mustard. Should go, well, let's have a look. I've got a mustard, so that should go nice and sort of yellowy. I'm going to bring in a baked earth, which has got a little bit more orange to it. And then the red oxide's going to give me my shadows. And hopefully that'll all look like a snail shell when we're done. And here's my baked earth, which is my mid-tones. I want a little bit of that up there, a little bit here, sort of on the middle. Same on this side, I want some up there. Do a lot around the middle. And then this is my red oxide, which I'm going to do in my shadows. Maybe shadow there, wouldn't there? And once again, I'm going to use the thick nib just to get as much alcohol in there as I can to mix in. And the red oxide's really giving us the convincing. I'll bring back the mustard. And I've got my matchsticks down here. So I think that's going to be a great colour for them. But it's also going to help us to tie in. I'm not a big believer in just having colours in isolation. If you've got the mustard, then have it throughout your illustration. It helps to just gel that illustration together. Now let's talk about this stick. I'm going to do a bit of mustard in there, but I'm also going to do some baked earth. And even some of that red oxide. I'm going to mix it with my thick nib. And I have this lovely pipe down here. I'm going to bring out my oak. It should be a lovely oaky colour. Maybe some saddle brown as well into that. And I think mustard could give us a nice little convincing brass work. Actually, I think this brass work also could be mustard up here on our stick. Now I've got some more brass, and where's this gold? A little stopwatch here. So I'm bringing in Sicilian yellow for the top of that. Some of that chain, but I also want my mustard to play. It could look nice on the bottom there. And I think brass buttons would be a win on this. So I'm going to do the same thing with Sicilian at the top and mustard at the bottom. Let's see how that looks. I think the collar of his shirt up here is going to go Sicilian. And I think these buttons are also going to have a bit of goldy brass work in them. The buttons of his vest. And I'm just going to throw a mustard in there just for fun. Now, my plan had been to do all this in Ohuhus, so I don't know, I've gone off script. I'm doing it all in Derwents, but that's not a problem. Get the same results colouring in Ohuhu markers as you can colouring in Derwents, as you can colouring in Polychromos, and what's even more fun is mixing them all together. So I'm going to bring in my Ohuhus now. I'm going to just get some, just to show you that I don't have to do this all in Derwents, even though I love the Derwents, they're very vibrant. I'm going to bring some of our yellows and golds into this clock in this fireplace with Ohuhus. So I'm going to start with something nice and light. This is my lightest one. This is the barium. And I'm just thinking that this fire is going to be a mix of a light yellow and up into oranges and reds. What that's going to do is cast light onto the rest of the mantelpiece. So I'm just going to throw some light in where I think that light would be hitting. These logs would be certainly showing that light. And some of these, some snail would be reflecting some of that light on his eye stalks even. Not too much, just a little fire in the background. All right, now this is my wonderful clock. This clock's available, I think, in one of Mr Fogherty's other books to colour in full size. So I want this clock to be gold, or have gold trim, I guess. So I'm starting with my lighter, which is my barium gold. You could use Canaria if you wanted. I think those hands should be gold as well, and that's certainly gold. All right, I'm moving up through my lemon yellow now. And I just want to add a little subtle texture. I'm trying to create the light reflecting off gold, but I want to leave that light gold there. And just bring in little touches of the lemon yellow. Right, let's bring in our melon yellow. Working through our yellows. You want to be even more careful with this because it's so easy to block out your nice light golds underneath. All right, I just want to bring some darkness into the background of those gears. And I'm going to do that. I think if my markers will just bleed too much into it. So I want to really pick it out with some, it's like a bronzy colour here. So what have we got? Raw umber, might be too light. Maybe something a bit darker. Brown ochre. It's got a bit more gold in it, doesn't it? Let's do brown ochre. All right, here's our brown ochre. And I've got it nice and sharp because I really want to try and pick out some detail in here. This is Caput Mortem Violet. Still a little bit darker. I'm bringing back my oak Derwent Inktense and my saddle brown Derwent Inktense, which is what we use for our snail skin. And I think we could make this clock body in that. Now let's bring in our colourless blender. And I think we need to continue with this sort of goldy brass for our trim around this clock. So this is our barium yellow. I'm going to bring in my lemon yellow. Yeah, I think some melon yellow. I've got a yellow grey 051 and I just really want to bring shadow into this. All right, while we're looking at this clock, let's play with a little bit of this vase. You know, I was thinking this vase should have this is turquoise blue. And I'm also going to bring in a smoky blue. And I'm just going to play a little bit with the, this is a blue-grey 011. And bring my smoky blue back in underneath that. All right, I've discovered another pipe. It's probably the same pipe. So maybe we should do it the same colours. This is my oak in Derwent Inktense. This is my saddle brown. Now let's bring in some Sicilian yellow. Just worried if I use mustard it might disappear. Alright, I've got a marigold here. I just want a bit more orange in. To our fire here. And I've got another sort of orangey browny colour. This is called taffy. Need some coral red really to convince us that this could be on fire. These logs are hot coals. And just while I've got that coral red, let's do the tips of these matchsticks. And I think even this box. This is a colour called red bean paste. I think we need some red roses. But to start with, I've got a light hot pink. I just want to have a highlights on these. And I think we've got some petals. Let's say they're petals. That's certainly a petal. I'm going to try and leave highlights from that hot light pink that I used. I just want to blend that a little bit, so I'm bringing back in my light hot pink and just giving that a bit of a blend while it's still nice and wet. Because I don't want a hard line, I just want that to be highlights. And let's just bring a touch of that red bean paste. I have this colour that I love called horizon green. I think this water could be some of that horizon green. And I think these are little sweat drops, aren't they? So let's do those horizon green as well. And I'm pretty sure the lenses of these goggles need to be that horizon green. The warm grey 50. Bring in our warm grey 160. Back to our warm grey 50. Oh, I've got a spanner here, let's do that the same sort of grey. Warm grey 50. And warm grey 160. And I'm just looking at this wall. I was wondering about doing it some wonderful Victorian vibrant colour, but I want more vibrancy to be in the clothes and stuff, so I really want that just to fade into the background. I think that was the inside of his coat. Oh, goodness me. Never fear, we'll fix it. All right, I'm thinking of going with some dark pink, some antique fuchsia, and some orchid smoke for his jacket. Let's just play with a little bit. This is my antique fuchsia to kick off with. And we'll come back in with some dark pink. And some orchid smoke. Light pink. No, antique fuchsia, dark pink. And bringing in my dark pink just to bring some shadow and life into this. And our dark smoke, our orchid smoke. Who can get these names right? You know what? I think he's got matching pants. This is our antique fuchsia. Bringing in our dark pink. And our orchid smoke. You know what? I think his hat's going to match, but maybe be a little darker. So antique fuchsia. Dark pink. Some of that orchid smoke. I'm even going to bring in some red bean paste. Let's just blend that all with that antique fuchsia. I think these buttons could be orchid smoke. And what do you think, guys? These shoes even? Some red bean paste. Let's bring in some warm grey 160 for the base of those shoes. Maybe even for those socks. All right, now I guess we've got to ask the question, what colour cloak is he wearing? And I am tempted to go with something vibrant, maybe even red. I'm tempted to do this colour red, which means I'm starting out with my light hot pink. And I think we used some red bean paste for the shadows. So let's bring that back in too, into our shadows here. But I want to make sure I leave some nice little bright spots. I'm going to do a bit of light hot pink blending. I think this stripe's going to be light hot pink. Yeah, maybe it needs a little bit more. What do you think? Some coral red. Yeah, let's do coral red. And, we've got this. Let's do his tongue. What do you think? Is he coordinated with Snail? With a bit of light hot pink? I think that could be the go. Maybe bring some of that dark pink in as a shadow for that. I've just noticed that I missed some of my shell in there. So there's some saddle brown. Now we come to our other Mr Fogherty, and I'm thinking maybe some dark greens for him. But we'll see how we go. Let's play with his hat first and see what that looks like. I've got a deep yellow green. You don't want to run the risk of making everything green, do you, for Mr Fogherty? So here's our deep yellow green, and I was going to come back in on top of that with a bronze green. And then dark olive green as our go-to colour in the background there. All right, I think maybe his pants could go along that same sort of line. He runs the risk of being a very coordinated frog, but I don't think he minds that sort of reputation. I think even when he's in his work gear, he's wearing the nice threads. So that was our deep yellow green, and now we're going with a bronze green. Let's give him some stripes on those pants, eh? And let's go with our dark olive to really punch in some shadows. I think we need a brass buckle on that. Maybe some brass or gold cufflinks. Because as we've mentioned, he's this is our lemon yellow, by the way. And we're just going to bring in some melon yellow. And I think some more warm grey 160 would do well for the soles of these shoes as well. Right, I think putting a green jacket on him would be a terrible mistake. I was wondering about doing a red jacket, but I think that also could be a bit too much red on the page. So what about some orangey jacket? That could be great. Like a Tuscan orange. Let's go with a Tuscan orange, maybe a cadmium yellow. This sort of vibe. Let's just go Tuscan and apricot. I'm going to kick off with my apricot. And his cuffs are going to be the colour of his shirt. So let's just play with this arm. There's our apricot. Here's our Tuscan orange, which will hopefully pull it back from the brink of being crazy, vibrant orange and into the more earthy orange. And I'm also going to bring, just for the shadows, some of that taffy that we used earlier. I think a bit of texture wouldn't go astray here. Yeah, that's going to work really well, I think. Okay, let's just roll that out across his coat. Now I'm bringing in Tuscan orange. And I'm just trying to leave highlights in that apricot. And then finally, a little bit of that taffy. And I'm putting it on a little bit textured. So I think this coat's not finely woven, it's more of a work coat. I'll just bring my apricot back in to sort of blend that a little bit. That was our apricot orange. This is our Tuscan orange. And then we're going to finish it off again with our taffy. Right, we used horizon green on this water. I was going to use it for this hanky that's sticking out of his pocket here. And I think maybe some taffy on these boots. In this belt. And I will bring my coral red back in for the rubies in his cufflinks. And a red bean paste button, I think it's called for here. Maybe some red bean paste in his shoes. Just add some shadow in there for fun. I have this colour called Queen Pink. And I think maybe his shirt should be this. It's the lightest pink I've got. And maybe his hat's a little bit fancy with some light pink on it. Oh yeah. Well, I think I just want a little bit of lemon yellow in his collar of his shirt. And I'll just play with some melon yellow as well. All right, antique fuchsia. Even Mr Fogherty's ashtrays match his fashion stents. Going with a dark pink. And of course our orchid smoke. Right. Let's do the rims of these goggles in a really light warm grey. 050 I think here. 050. And we've got that brass clasp, so I think maybe there's a matching brass thing on the front there. Maybe some taffy goes in there. I'm bringing some yellow ochre in for the strap and the leather surrounds of these goggles. Right, I'm going to move aside from Mr Fogherty for a minute. Let's look at inside this fireplace. This is our barium yellow. So I'm going to base it with yellow, and I'm going to bring in some of that yellow ochre because this is all fading out to black eventually, but it's going to play with how we do that. I'm just blending that with the barium. All right, let's bring some of that brown ochre in. There's some Caput Mortem violet, I think it is. Yeah. Back to our brown ochre. And the Caput Mortem Violet. All right, am I going off the ballpark here a little bit, people? I'm going with my apricot. And Tuscan orange. I think we need gold trim on here, so let's get our barium yellow back out. And then work our way through the yellows, lemon yellow. Melon, let's get our melon yellow in there. And then let's take that apricot back for this middle section. Followed by our Tuscan orange. And a yellow ochre to fill in these shadows. I think I will bring some taffy in to here. And I'm also going to bring some Tuscan orange into this, just for a subtle tie-in to the mantelpiece. All right, we're getting there, people. Hold on in there. Right, I think we need a nice dark colour, but not black for the cracks in time and space. And I'm thinking we'll go like an argyle purple to bring in all those violets and lilacs that we use. So it's a nice dark colour, but it tends to that. What do you think? Is it convincing you that it's time space being cracked open? What coloured carpet do you think Mr Fogherty would have? I think he would have a dark green carpet. Do you think he'd have a dark olive carpet? Let's start there and then we can add to it with our polychromos. I'm hoping that doing a nice dark carpet would anchor this whole thing down. And I guess we're going to find out. Maybe some shell white in those. This is my yellow ochre. Or this is the light chrome yellow. I just want to bring texture and some light source to this dark carpet now just to lift it. That should work really lovely, beautifully out of the dark. And I'm being pretty rough because I want texture. Bit of texture here. Maybe some yellow shining off to show this fire. Because if you're going to get sucked into a space vortex, you want to do it in the comfort of a burning fire, don't you, in your own home. All right, let's get stuck into our Kaput Mortem Violet. And just bring a little bit of shadow back in, just around the edges. Just want a really subtle wallpaper pattern. So I'm using my white polychromos. It's just a bit too flat, I think, that background colour, but if I put some little bits of texture in there. And it's really subtle. Right at this point, I'm just fine-tuning and doing fun things. This is our walnut brown. Right, I've got blue-grey 11. I just want to really subtly give these eyes a blue shadow. It's going to take away a little bit of that starkness of the white. Do the same thing down here. Maybe a little bit of that in his spats. Could put Mortem Violet. All right, I've got a jelly roll. I'm just going to do some highlighting. you think there are stars in the Time Space Continuum? I'm adding some in just for fun. Well, you know what? We're going to call that one finished, people. That was the Time Space Continuum. Mr Fogherty meets himself and breaks time and space. From Lost in Time. I enjoyed colouring that in. I really hope you enjoyed colouring along with me. So glad that you made it to the end. Well done. And I appreciate you watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, guys, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And I shall no doubt see you in another video, but for now I am going to say goodbye. See you later, guys.